This is the Garage News Desk, the stories with Michael Porter. New York. Governor Kathy Hochul announced Thursday that she will not remove Mayor Eric Adams from office, but instead proposed state and city legislation to increase ethical guardrails on City Hall. After careful consideration, I have determined that I will not commence removal proceedings at this time, Hochul said during the press conference. She dismissed suggestions that outside pressure influenced her decision. Constant pressure is what I deal with all day long, and it's absolutely no bearing on any decisions I make, she stated. Voters determine who they want or who they do not want to represent them in elective office, Hochul said. Hochul spoke about concerns about the potential disruption and chaos that a removal proceeding could bring to the city, warning that such a process could lead to a situation where there's multiple mayors of this city in the course of 1 year. When asked whether Adams should resign, Hochul reiterated that the decision rests with him, saying it is up to an individual if they want to resign the office to which they've been elected. She avoided directly answering whether Adams had lost the ability to govern. Pressed on her decision not to remove Adams, she clarified that she was not surrendering any power but believed this was not the right time to take such action. Hochul outlined the legislative framework following a series of meetings this week with elected officials and community leaders. Hochul proposed appointing a special inspector general within the state inspector general's office to oversee city investigations and prevent interference. She also called for granting independent litigation authority to the city comptroller, public advocate, and city council speaker, allowing them to challenge federal actions without relying on City Hall's law department. Additionally, she proposed expanded funding for city oversight under the deputy state comptroller to monitor city decisions related to federal matters. These measures will be effective immediately and expire at the end of 2025, subject to renewal, Hochul said. She also urged the mayor to fill key deputy mayor positions before vacancies arise and assured that her administration would help retain essential commissioners. The reforms will be introduced through both state and local legislation, which would aim to strengthen accountability mechanisms within city government. Meanwhile, Adams appeared in federal court Wednesday, where a judge reviewed the Department of Justice's decision to dismiss charges against him. The judge examined concerns that the dismissal might limit the mayor's cooperation with the Trump administration's immigration enforcement policies. New York on Thursday sued some of the country's biggest distributors of electronic cigarettes, accusing the companies of violating state laws that prohibit the sale of vaping flavors and designs that appeal to children. Attorney General Letitia James announced the lawsuit targeting middlemen that distribute fruit and candy-flavored e-cigarettes like Puff Bar and Elf Bar to hundreds of convenience stores and gas stations across the state. The approach differs from past litigation by New York and other states, which targeted vaping manufacturers, such as Juul Labs. Widely blamed for sparking the teen vaping trend, Juul has paid more than $1 billion to settle dozens of state and local lawsuits and investigations into its early marketing practices, which included launch parties and product giveaways. The company stopped selling flavors like mango and mint in 2019 and is no longer popular with teens. Instead, Chinese-made disposable e-cigarettes like Elf Bar have become the top choice among high school and middle school students. None of the products are approved by federal health regulators, but they continue shipping into the U.S., often mislabeled as batteries, cell phones, or other products. The state's nearly 200-page legal complaint points to widespread evidence of illegal conduct, including documents showing illegal shipments of flavored vapes to New York. The filing also includes photos of brightly colored e-cigarettes that resemble soft drinks and candy and come in flavors like Fruity Bears Freeze, cotton candy, and strawberry cereal donut milk. New York banned all vaping flavors other than tobacco in 2020. For too long, these companies have disregarded our laws in order to profit off of our young people. But we will not risk the health and safety of our kids, James said in a statement. The lawsuit seeks hundreds of millions of dollars in damages from the companies, as well as a permanent ban on their sales of flavored vapes in New York. Companies named in the lawsuit include Demand Vape of New York, Evo Brands of California, Safa Goods of Florida, and Midwest Goods of Illinois. Calls and messages to the companies were not immediately returned Thursday morning. According to the lawsuit, Demand Vape maintains close ties with international manufacturers, such that its co-founder routinely travels to China where Demand Vape's products originate to direct flavor development and marketing. In 2022 litigation, the co-founder of Buffalo-based Demand Vape told a federal judge that his company had sold more than $132 million worth of Elf Bar e-cigarettes in the past year. The company that makes Elf Bar is based in Shenzhen, China, and sells flavors including strawberry mango and lemon mint. Despite the continued availability of disposable e-cigarettes, the vaping rate among U.S. teens has fallen to a 10-year low of under 6%, according to federal figures released last year. Government health officials attribute the drop to more aggressive U.S. enforcement, including hundreds of warning letters sent to retail stores selling unauthorized vaping products. Washington, an idea first proposed on social media, has bubbled up to the White House and received President Donald Trump's enthusiastic endorsement. Take some of the savings from billionaire Elon Musk's drive to cut government spending and return it to taxpayers. I love it, Trump said late Wednesday on Air Force One when asked about the proposal. If Musk's target of $2 trillion in spending cuts is achieved by next year, supporters of the idea say that about one-fifth of those funds could be distributed to tax-paying households in checks of about $5,000. But before you start planning for a windfall, budget experts say such huge savings, nearly one-third of the federal government's annual spending, are highly unlikely. And sending out a round of checks, similar to the stimulus payments distributed by Trump and then President Joe Biden during the pandemic, could fuel inflation, economists warn, though White House officials dismiss that concern. With the annual budget deficit at $1.8 trillion last year and Trump proposing extensive tax cuts, there will also be significant pressure to use all the savings to reduce that deficit, rather than pass on part of it. Here's what to know about the proposal. Where is this coming from? James Fishback, founder of investment firm Azoria Partners, which he launched at Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida, promoted the idea Tuesday on X, formerly known as Twitter, prompting Musk to respond that he would check with the president. Fishback said there have also been behind-the-scenes conversations about the issue with White House officials. Musk has estimated that his Department of Government Efficiency has cut $55 billion so far, a tiny fraction of the $6.8 trillion federal budget. But Doge's public statements so far haven't verified the presumed savings, and its claims that tens of millions of dead people are fraudulently receiving Social Security have been disproven. Fishback supports having the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office determine how much Doge saved. If Doge cuts $500 billion by July 2026, he said, then the checks would be $1,250, rather than $5,000. We uncovered enormous waste, fraud, and abuse, Fishback said in an interview with the Associated Press. And we are going to make good and pay restitution and then rewrite the social contract between the taxpayer and the federal government. Fishback supports sending out checks, rather than using all the money to reduce the deficit, because it would encourage Americans to seek out wasteful government spending in their communities and report it to Doge. When am I going to get my check? Okay, let's slow down. According to the proposal, Doge must first complete its work, slated to be done by July 2026. Once that happens, one-fifth of any savings could be distributed later that year to the roughly 79 million households that pay income taxes. About 40% of Americans don't pay such taxes, so they wouldn't get a check. How much can Doge really save? Color most economists and budget experts skeptical that its focus on waste, fraud, and abuse can actually reduce government spending by much. Budget cutters from both parties have sought to eliminate waste, which doesn't have much of a political constituency for decades, with little success in reducing the deficit. One of the biggest moves by the Trump administration so far has been to fire tens of thousands of government workers, but such changes aren't likely to produce big savings. Only a small share of total spending goes to federal employees, said Douglas Elmendorf, former director of the Congressional Budget Office. The big money is in federal benefits and in federal taxes, and those are not in DOJ's purview. In November, John DiIulio Jr., a political scientist at the University of Pennsylvania, wrote in an essay for the Brookings Institution that eliminating the entire federal civilian workforce would leave in place about 95% of all federal spending and the $34 trillion national debt. DiIulio noted that government contractors and nonprofits that receive government funds now employ 3 times as many people as the federal government's 2.2 million employees. It's also not clear how much in savings can be achieved without Congress codifying it in law. Firing someone doesn't save money until Congress comes back and reduces the appropriation for that employee's agency, Elmendorf said. If you fire somebody but leave the appropriation where it is, then that money can be spent on something else. So DOJ can't really achieve savings until there's legislative change as well. Wouldn't another round of government checks contribute to higher inflation? Trump and his economists blame Biden's $1,200 stimulus checks, distributed in the spring of 2021, for fueling the worst spike in inflation in 4 decades. Yet they maintain that sending checks stemming from reduced government spending wouldn't boost inflation. Kevin Hassett, director of the White House's National Economic Council, said Thursday that since the money would have been spent by the government anyway, having it spent by consumers would be a wash. Biden and Trump's stimulus checks during the pandemic were deficit financed, which can be more inflationary. But Ernie Tedeschi, director of economics at the Yale Budget Lab and an economist in the Biden White House, said that more government checks are the last thing we need economically right now. The U.S. unemployment rate is now much lower than in 2021, Tedeschi said, which means that businesses could struggle to hire enough workers to meet the additional demand created by a round of checks. Worker shortages can push up prices. Yet some Democrats agree with Hassett, but for different reasons. I can't imagine they'd be inflationary because I can't imagine they'd be big enough, said Elaine Kamarck, senior fellow in governance studies at the Brookings Institution. Kamarck, who worked with Vice President Al Gore to cut government waste in the Clinton administration, dismissed the DOJ dividend as ridiculous. There's no money there, and certainly not enough money to make a big contribution to taxpayers, she said. The guy just says things, she added, referring to Musk. This is the Garage News Desk, the stories. Thanks for watching. Take care of yourself. I am Michael Porter.